back to bed, America. Your government is in control again. Here, watch this. Shut up. You are free to do as we tell you. You are free to do as we tell you.
This is Nolan McGregor monologuing shamelessly for OccupyPortlandNews.com. So you've probably seen a lot of the footage that's come out of Spain recently. These so-called austerity measures are the rich man's way of saying that you're not going to get anything out of life, so get used to it, in the clearest, most thinly disguised terms we've ever seen. The corporate ideology has always been based on metaphysical notions of personal advancement and paths to prosperity. But now, with profits in decline all over the world, that illusion has become too expensive to maintain. We've come to a point where all that's left to be said, even by paid liars, is that the world's coming apart, our cherished 401k dreams are never going to come true, and there's nothing left to do but hang our heads, tighten our belts, and wait for death. That's what austerity is saying to us. Now, by way of visual aid, here's what the Spanish people had to say in response. That's Occupy Spain, specifically its Occupy the Congress action, surrounding the Spanish government complex and demanding the immediate resignation of the entire government. The government fired back with tear gas, stun grenades, and the beating of unarmed women. But as we know from the Tunisian and Egyptian experiences, more force does not necessarily equal more order. In fact, typically, the harder the police push, the harder the people push back. And if you look at the size of the crowd, you can see this has already gone too far. The Spanish government looks done for. And it's important to keep in mind, everyone, that this is an explicitly declared permutation of the Occupy phenomenon, which began here in the good old US of A, at least in that terminology. Obviously, the Arab Spring began this whole process, but these Spanish resistors are unmistakably inspired by and a part of a global movement that our own local Occupy groups are also party to. So we're all in this, and the death of the Spanish government, which looks inevitable at this point, is one notch for occupiers everywhere. And if anyone asks you, Occupy, didn't those guys die off last year? You can tell them no. We just tore a bloody swath through the belly of Europe and we're not done. Because if past experience has taught us anything, it's that revolutions overseas can inspire similar actions here. The Arab Spring is what started all this, and we all take heart seeing our struggling brothers achieve the victory we too hope for. Add to that Spain is a large, well-known, globally relevant country, not some little place that people can pretend doesn't exist, and the fact that this is explicitly inspired by Occupy, and I think you're going to see a massive shot in the arm to the movement in this country. As we speak, I know I feel the powerful need to get out into our own streets and join our Spanish pals in the rousing game they've started. So if you're an occupier and you're looking at this and you can't take inspiration from it or feel like you're really a part of it all because Spain is so far away, remember that what's being done in Spain is being done by people who are like you, no better than you and not very different. Well, we in America certainly can't take credit for what's happened. We can take heart from it because this is all of us. All of us in the sense that we are all part of a world of people who share a vision of the future, a vision of a better world. We share in each other's victories and defeats, whether we're in New York or Madrid, because we have all taken on the same responsibility to history.
Speaking of rejoining the rousing game that our Spanish brothers and sisters have started, I have a few words of caution to occupiers around the world. Remember what happened to the Egyptians when they threw out Mubarak, and they ended up getting basically Mubarak 2.0. It's very important for us to seize this opportunity before austerity begins in our respective regions to refine a system to replace our existing government, to work on your general assemblies, to work on your reasonable alternatives to the types of oppressive legislators that the plutocratic cliques of bankers have actually manipulated and destroyed our prospective governments. You know, the nation state is being taken over by these combines of cliques of plutocrats, and we need to provide people an alternative system.
Yeah, it's important to remember that in any successful revolution ever, one of the prerequisites to success, one of the main things you have to have, is an alternative to what there is already. If you look at Egypt now, where you saw millions of people out in the streets, they went in, they got rid of the government, but they didn't create a government. So these opportunistic cliques of military generals, they were able to take what the Egyptian people had achieved and use that for their own ends. Obviously, you know, it's not over in Egypt. People are still out there fighting, but you know, it's just something you got to keep in mind. Another example is France in 1968. That's a situation and a movement that Occupy has actually taken a lot of inspiration from. But in France, you had millions of workers on strike. You had basically every student in the country out in the streets, and that was enough to get Charles de Gaulle, the leader of France at the time, to hop in a helicopter, fly to Germany, and he was ready to never look back. But because the strikers and the protesters didn't offer a concrete alternative, like a real, actual system that people could sink their teeth into and say, okay, this is what's going to prevent just chaos, because they didn't have that, you know, the whole thing, eventually, it just petered out. So it's absolutely crucial that we do everything in our power to build our own parallel institutions that can actually keep society together. In this case, it's not about just destroying one government, one system, one economic paradigm. It's about building the one we have, the one that we have in our minds, and replacing it, pushing away the old one with the new one. And I think the General Assemblies are the closest thing that we've got to a parallel system of government at this point. Obviously, you know, our own procedures, they do have problems, but then they are our problems, not problems imposed on us, and that's what you have to remember.